It is the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
I don't want to lose. I want to win.
I need professional help.
Sports Betting Weekly.
Sports Betting Weekly, sponsored by EasySportsData.com. The books use data, shouldn't you too? And this is Easy Sports Data, like the preschoolers use. EasySportsData.com.
I win here and I win there. Now what?
Sports Betting Weekly.
I want to win.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
You should also check out SportsBettingLessons.com. You'll learn some old tricks because sometimes how you bet is more important than who you bet. SportsBettingLessons.com.
Let's just do it. Let's meet this thing head on. And you were in it to win it. Talk about an education.
Sports Betting Weekly.
Wow, winning.
Sports Betting Weekly.
Sit back and enjoy the show.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Welcome to Sports Betting Weekly. I am second half Chaz. If it is Thursday at 8 o'clock, and remember, with that whole time zone changing thing, when they kick the clocks ahead, you may not know what time it is. But look at your watch, look at your phone, look at your TV. If it's 8 o'clock Thursday, you got a shot at winning some money right now. Otherwise, you're going to have a shot at winning money on Friday, or you're going to have a shot at winning money on Saturday, because though we are bracket people in terms of how we talk, we are not bracket people in terms of how we walk. What do you say, Wes, from 151 Sports Investing? Would that be a good slogan?
I think that's a great slogan. That's how we live every day.
It really is a fun time of year. We talked about it on the show that we did for Belly Up Sports that came out this morning, the Bracket Sports Betting 101 version. I feel, because I hung around with you two guys for a few weeks now, you're like my training camp. Not even spring training, because football guys work a lot harder to get ready than baseball guys do. You're my training camp because I can handle tomorrow. I know what I've got to deal with because I did it. I did it already.
Well, and this past week, maybe 2 weeks, man, it's been intense. I mean, we've had action every day. There's days when you're texting me back that you haven't even had a cup of coffee yet, and we've already cashed 2 tickets. They're alarm clock days, like you like to call it.
No doubt about it. Now, the beauty of it is we have March Madness back, but we don't have it in its same sense. And you're talking to a guy, or I'm talking, so you're listening to a guy that has gone to, we went to every single event for the West Coast region for years and years and years and years, and so now it's all in Indianapolis. Remember, we talked to Mo from the Mo Radio Show about that, but more importantly, right now there would be games going on 2 years ago, correct?
Oh, I'm on mute. Yeah, there would be games going on right now. Well, there is games going on right now. There's a couple of them. I'm watching this Drake Wichita State game, and so yeah, there's games right now.
That's a perfect segue to get into our live action. Now, the couple of the things that I'm looking at is, what can we do here? And the first thing that's jumping off of me is they didn't score any points so far in this game. Right?
No, it's been a light scoring first half. The first half is 35-25. We're at halftime right now. And Wichita State didn't surprise me that much because when they're scoring, they're scoring.
Well, no, but, I'm going to give you an update. It's halfway through the second quarter. Drake's got 25 points in 30 minutes of basketball. They're averaging less than a point a minute.
Yeah, this is a slow scoring game, and they're not falling either, which that surprised me because Drake gets hot.
Now, in past years, Black Hawk West from 151 Sports Investing, there would be as many as 4 tournaments going on. How many are there this year? Do you know?
Well, there's the NIT. There's women's out there. We got these games where they're playing to get in, and then we got the big one that starts tomorrow. And then there's also one out there which I think is FCS. So I think there's 4 or 5 going on right now.
I know in the past, before the pandemic hit, there was a proliferation of tournament options for teams. So we were seeing 10 and 14 teams playing basketball still, you know? All right,
So
let's look at
time
that
for
game,
preparation.
the Drake-Wichita State game. It's jumping out at me. I would want nothing to do with that game.
I don't want anything to do with that game either, but I would take the points in Drake. If it was must make a decision, I would take Drake in the points just because 9-point margin and the spread wasn't that large going into the game. I think it was a 3-point game or a 2-point game. So one would tell you that basket's good. This is not a Drake type game. We've watched a lot of Drake this year and cashed a lot of tickets on them.
Yeah, so their total right now is 47.5. The Drake total, Wichita State total 57.5. And unfortunately, when games go that deep into the second half and they're kind of look like they did in the first half, actually in the second half, Wichita State's up 15-5. So they are covering whatever they were given because they were only up by 1 at halftime. 15-5 is a tough place to jump in. The point spread right now ranges anywhere from Drake plus 19.5. And as Mikey Betts would say, you got to lay a lot of thousands to win a few hundreds on that one, all the way down to minus 5.5. So if you think Drake can come back and win the game by 6, you get 10-1 on your money. I don't.
Wichita State was a 2-point dog going into this game, so the value is on Wichita or is on Drake and the points. But I'm not touching this one. This one is an odd one to look at, and the beauty and everything that we got going on. We got hockey happening right now. There's a couple NBA plays. We don't have to touch this game.
Well, we did. We talked about that on the show, and I mentioned that one of the things that I like is when we're able to find a second period over, and it wins while we're talking. That's what I'm liking. So we're going to have a proclamation starting today, Thursdays, 8 o'clock Eastern on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, also on SportsBettingWeeklyLive.com, also on the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. We're going to bet a second half over and try to win it because I like those bets. I love overs. Everybody wins. Yay, they scored. Yay, they scored. Of course, my son was never a hockey goalie. I would imagine if your son was a hockey goalie, that would.
Well, 9 goals scored in 2 periods last night. I mean, that was just wild seeing what the Rangers did. They single-handedly covered the total in the second period. I mean, that was absurd. I almost thought that there was a
for the entire game, right?
Yeah, they covered it for the entire game, and they did that. They had 7 goals in the second period, so they covered that on their own in only the second period at 5.5 game total.
All right, so we've got a half dozen games that are on the board for a hockey, and only one of them has a goal in the second period so far. But again, that hasn't stopped us because sometimes that 1.5, 2.5 turns out to be both cash for us. And the other night, remember, it went down to 1.5. I had the original 2.5, and we ended up getting the 3. But as you know, Wes, when you hit that first live action play, and now the worst you're going to do is break even or split a couple, it's a much better way to watch a hockey game.
Well, it sure is. And any game, once you get that first cash, then you got a decision to make. And what I like to do is you cash that first one. Then I like to take half the profit in on something else, and I can't lose. You're already plus money. Yep. And if you win it again, well, then now you can go back in again, and it's just a great way to play.
No doubt about it. All right, so do we have anything? Any of these games you're thinking they're going to open it up? So we'll go. Philly and the Islanders are scoreless. Boston and Buffalo, they've got 1 goal between them. It's a really, if you had the under, now there's a bet, in case you don't know hockey, guys, there's a bet you can make, which is add up all the goals for all the teams, for all the games, and there's an over-under set. And today it is what, Wes?
I didn't look at the all-over or the all-under, but I do know that we caught 12 goals in one game the other night that covered the all-over, and in that game it was 39. With those, if it averages above 6 points, I don't touch it. If it averages right at 5 or in between 5 and 5.5, I like the all-over just because for that 4-point game, you're probably going to get covered by a 6-point game or a 7-point game. And it's a fun way to play if you're not in front of the TV, and a lot of these teams are scoring goals. They figured each other out. But you mentioned live. What I'm looking at right now, and I jumped on it before the sport changed. Carolina Hurricanes were down by 1. I jumped on money line and over 2.5 for the game. And then they scored a goal to tie it up. The other one that I'm looking at, and again, I like Buffalo, and I like Buffalo against Boston to go over 1.5 goals. That changed to 2.5, and I still like it at 2.5. I think that Buffalo has a chance to win this game, but I like them to go over 2.5 goals for the game.
And that's just the Sabres by themselves.
That's just the Sabres by themselves.
So when I look at Buffalo by themselves, so that game is tied up.
Yeah, that game tied it up, and so did the Hurricanes. So I jumped on both, and I guess we weren't quick enough to get it up.
And it happens. It happens. Again, that's part of live action. Sometimes you could be ready to go, but your sports book and your fingers don't make it happen. I mean, it is very difficult to get live action in sometimes. I'll never forget one game. I was here and my buddy was over who doesn't bet. I was on my phone and the line went from 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 to 4 to 4.5. Obviously, I had the right team. Everybody else was betting it too. The line kept moving and you just couldn't get it. It wouldn't stay at one number long enough for you to get a confirmation bet. And so sometimes it doesn't matter if you're in the right place at the right time. You just can't get that bet in sometimes, All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna come back to this and see, because that's my goal. Going in, we're gonna start looking at these games ahead of time, and we're gonna know what we're gonna do. And as soon as we open up the show, that's the first thing we're gonna hop on. Hockey is so exciting to watch, and it really is. When you have team totals involved, it does change the way you watch the game, especially those last few minutes when that one guy that's wearing all the stuff, he leaves. I don't know if he got an argument with the other guys, but the other guys stay, and then some other guy comes out, and he doesn't have half of the stuff on that the other guy had, and they pull that goalie. That open net changes the world in hockey, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it really does, and it's about, I was looking at it, because you and I had exchanged texts. It's somewhere in the teens. It's around 15, in between 15 and 20% success rate pulling the goalie. But it doesn't matter. If you're losing 2-1, losing 3-1, it really doesn't make a difference. So they may as well get the extra attacker out there. But man, that changes everything. Because if you need the goal, because you're on the losing side of it, you're biting your nails every time the other team gets the puck. But if you need the other guy to score to hit your over or to hit your 1.5, you want them to hit the net and get it. And why didn't he skate out? And you want the goalie pulled early.
Yeah, and again, we catch so many times we've caught a hockey game where we bet it, and like 3 minutes later there's a goal, 3 minutes later there's another goal, and we're just easy winners. But the question I have is, what technology do they use once the goalie leaves the ice? The posts get wider, right? Isn't that how it works? Because I know how many of my open net goals have hit a post. I just got to assume the post got wider.
Well, and that's you would think, because they're shooting from the other end of the ice and somehow making it in there. I'm wondering where those goals were in the first period when I'm trying to get I'm trying to get a P1 over.
Exactly. All right, so here's what I'm looking at: Chicago, Tampa Bay. Now I know you're a Chicago Blackhawk fan because your nickname is Blackhawk West. I also know Tampa Bay's pretty good, and I know they scored 4 goals already in the first. Now that's a lot of goals, but now they're halfway through the second, and they haven't scored at all. Would that be a game where I would want to say, hey, what can I get that to 1.5, and in 12 minutes get a goal and a half?
That's another one that I was looking at, and my computer's moving slow. But that game, I think we're going to see 6 goals. I think we're going to see that for sure. And I say that because somebody's going to score to take the lead, and then there's the empty netter possibility. But as I'm looking at the game, and the players that are in. These are both the two starting goalies, and so it's surprising that they have 4 goals on the board. I'm trying to pull the number.
Well,
so the number for the game right now is 7.5.
Right,
I don't like that.
Let me ask you this, because you many times said sometimes, guys, you got to look at the difference between the team totals and see if you have an issue. They got Chicago 3.5, but Tampa 4.5 right now.
I don't see Tampa putting 5 on the board. Not against Lankinen. Chicago's got a better chance there. 3.5 and 4.5. What? I don't know. I haven't mathed yet today. That's 8, and the spread, the over under is 7.5. Halfway through the second, like I said, I think we get 6 on this game. I don't think we see 8. So
we're going to hold off on the second period,
and then
and we'll go to the third period. They offer in the second period minus 300 on a half a goal. So if they score a goal, you got to lay 300 to win 100. That's not going to happen with me much. So
I was going to say I'm seeing the second period at 1. The over under is 1. So 1 goal and you push. That's worth a play at minus 125. 1 goal pushes, 2 goals.
And I'm not getting that. I'm not getting that on my end. And that's the other thing. You know what? Right now, I've got like 3 or 4 books I use if you want to count my legal horse racing one. The rest of them are all. If I have a big weekend, I'm so excited because normally it is a hassle to cash out offshore. But when John's down there, I just have him swing by, pick up my money, boom, pay me when I go to Vegas. Everybody wins, you know? All right, so where we're at time to talk about this weekend. So like we said, right now we would normally have games on that are bracket busting games, and we would already have an upset or 2. By tomorrow at this time, we will have an upset or 2. I'm going to ask you another question I don't know. Now, in my defense, I didn't learn that it wasn't Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday until like 10 minutes before I went on and did the show with Belly Up Sports and Belly Up Fantasy, because I did not know. Is it every weekend's like this, do you know? Or is it next week it goes back to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Is every weekend like this, I'm guessing, but I really don't know. I've been focused on the games that we're looking at tomorrow and even on Saturday's games and just where I'm going to have action. So, and I think that there is games on Thursday, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna while we talk, I'm gonna go ahead and put together that schedule. All right. So what we've got is,
a place
for the first time in a while, we have not had a live play in the first segment, mostly because, again, you can't force it. You can't force it. And we've had a couple games where we forced it. A couple weeks where we forced it, and you can see the difference when it. And we say that, let it come to you. Don't force your plays. Let your plays come to you. So what I talk about with the brackets is, brackets are money line plays, and though we will do money line plays, very seldom are you and I going to start a game with money line plays on a favorite. We might start on a dog, but almost never on a favorite because we like them. We're going to wait, like you said, and see what happens early. If you got a big point spread and they fall behind a little bit, all of a sudden the point spread will come right to you. And sometimes, like Houston did last week for us, they not only come back, cover that bet, they cover the second half, and they cover for the game, and you actually do look like a genius. It doesn't always work that way, but sometimes you do look like a genius. So we're going to go through our brackets, but we're going to do it a little differently. When we come back, we're going to talk more ATS because, again, you know what? The brackets to me is like a future bet. If I win, I win, but I want to win tomorrow. I want to win tonight. I want to win Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's my goal with this show. When we come back, that's what we're going to do. You're listening to Sports Betting Weekly.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Sports Betting Weekly.
You keep lying when you ought to be truthing. And you keep losing when you ought to not bet.
Sit back and enjoy the show.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Welcome back back to Sports Betting Weekly on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network and Belly Up Sports Podcast. I am Second Half Chaz, but I am handing off the microphone to Blackhawk West from 151 Sports Investing so he can talk about his top plays for tomorrow. I'm looking for your top 2 plays and why, while I send the link to Mohammed's correct email address.
Well, I'll take the bullet on that one if I forwarded you correct. I should have done the copy and paste. But so I want to mention that when we were talking earlier, Drake is now in the lead. Drake is now up 46-45.
There you go.
So if you jumped on it and took the points, which we were afraid of, but you may have found yourself a cash ticket because they are in the lead. What I'm looking at for this weekend, there's 2 totally different approaches to writing your bracket to win your office pool than there is making money off of these games. I think when you're writing your bracket, strategically, your sets and you're trying to get a more potential point total in the end than you are than the other guy has. But when you look year over year, most of these games are chalky. I mean, there is an upset, but most of these games are pretty chalky. Some of these larger spreads, what I'm looking at is, I'm looking at the Baylor game, and it's a 25.5 point spread. But then when you look at the first half was 13.5. So I'm looking at just taking Baylor over 37.5 for the first half. And then I'm looking at the game total at the 66.5 because I don't want to have to lay that many points. I'm happier just cheering for everybody. And if you do the math on that, the 13.5 that they're laying in the first half, well, they have to score that in order to be winning by that. So you can just take 13.5 and put that right there. They only need another 24 points to cover for me. So I really like that game. And then I really like Ohio and the way that they're playing. Ohio's been a monster on the boards, and there's a big gap between the points that Ohio is scoring and the points that Virginia is allowing. Ohio's averaging over 80 points a game, and Virginia is holding teams to right around 60 points per game. Somewhere in the middle is going to be they're going to meet somewhere in the middle. And so when I'm looking at that Ohio game, I like Ohio for the first half over 28.5 because they're averaging 80 points a game. So for them to get to 29 points, I don't think it's going to take much. And then I like that game total for 61.5. I personally, when I look at these games, I'm not approaching a game where there's a 25-point favorite laying 25 points. There's just a more approachable way to lay it. And I would say when you're placing action on these games, don't look for these upsets. That's bracket stuff. That's like fantasy football stuff versus actually playing the action to cash a ticket. And I'm looking at first half overs on teams where they have these big point spreads, 20 and 20.5. Those are the big 2 that I'm looking at. And there's a whole bunch more. I could talk for an hour about what's interesting.
What we're going to do. We're going to have you, while I talk, we're going to have you forward the link to Mohammed to the email that you know is right, because it looks like the one I sent him to is the one we had, but it kicked back. So do that, and I'm going to talk about some things. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how I look at the board when I first walk into the casino. Say I'm at the, I've never been to March Madness on a Thursday when the games start on Thursday. Oh, and by the way, Wes, I have checked the schedule, and it's going to blow your mind, and I'll talk about that when we get you done with your email duties. But what I'm looking at when I walk in is I'm looking at names that make you feel good. So it's did you ever see someone you hadn't seen in a while, but you never liked them? And so you see them, and you don't go out of your way to draw attention to yourself. Yeah, if they're in the grocery store on the other aisle, you let them be. And then there's those people that you see them, and right away, Wes, you just yell out. You're so happy to see them. Those are college basketball teams to me. Actually, it's college football teams too. So when I wake up Friday and I see Virginia Tech at Florida, I got no feelings. When I see Colgate at Arkansas, I remember we laughed at Colgate because they had to win the championship game on last Sunday, and they were like 10-point favorites, and they won by like 12, so they covered. but I don't think they have a shot against Arkansas. I like Arkansas in that game. Then Drexel in Illinois. Well, Illinois is getting 22.5, and I think this falls into the same category that Wes was talking about. And we talked about that, so if you haven't seen the Sports Betting 101 video that we did, it's on the Belly Up Fantasy Twitter account. You need to go check it out. But one of the things we talked about is how much less stress when you got the team total over and you don't care about the other team. As a matter of fact, if I have Illinois' team total over, I want Drexel to do well. I want them to have fond memories of their first-round knockout at Illinois because I want them to score points, because if they score points, Illinois is going to score points. Utah State and Texas Tech. I have bad feelings about both of those teams. Both of those teams have let me down recently. Oral Roberts at Ohio State. You know, Ohio State, we were on this same show about 4 weeks ago. Remember when they had that big weekend? We on our cash tickets page, it was the big weekend. I think it was the Michigan Ohio State game. Ohio State was fighting for a number 1 seed, and they lost like 3 or 4 games in a row. So Baylor at Hartford. Good for Hartford, the insurance capital of the world. Good for Hartford. Boy, that's going to be ugly. And I would say again, as Wes mentioned, that I'm putting that in the Illinois factor. When I get up to the Loyola, the nun, the one with the nun, the 100-year-old nun. You know what? What a good little program they got, because that nun gets more publicity than Whoopi Goldberg did when she led that choir. I mean, it's really a good story. You know what? I hope they win. I don't know if they will. Oregon State at Tennessee. Well, Oregon State shot the lights out last game. I don't think they're going to do that again. I like Tennessee in that game. Liberty, Oklahoma State, yeah, whatever. Buffalo, Colorado State is an NIT game. I would, down the road, if there's a day when there's only an NIT game, I might look at that game. Colorado State's a pretty good ball club, but I'm not betting it. Wisconsin and North Carolina want nothing to do with that game, mostly because all Wisconsin does is lose, and they're only getting 1.5 points. Cleveland State at Houston. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Championship Footballs is going to the TriStar Sports Collectibles autograph show in Houston, Texas in June. If Houston makes the Final Four, that's going to be a pretty nice item to have. I don't think there'll be too many other guys selling Houston Final Four basketballs from souvenir basketballs from championshipfootballs.com. But I have a surprise when it comes to Houston when we talk brackets that I will fill you in on. But yeah, Houston should whack Cleveland State. And that is one game where you got to watch how they come out, but they should win that game handily. So 20 doesn't scare me as much there as the previous 20s that I had seen. Purdue, North Texas. Yeah, you know what? I say next now, but as we all know, and I mentioned this on the show, I could have 4 games I look at. And the one that I throw out beforehand is the one I have more action on by the time the game ends than any other game, because live action will change my opinions on things. Another NIT game, Rutgers at Clemson. I took Rutgers in the bracket. I don't think I'm going to bet that game, but I know I did. Now, Syracuse, San Diego State, the last game of the night, which means when this game ends, every single pair of eyeballs that is watching basketball for March Madness will be watching the San Diego State Aztecs. I got to ask you that, if you think, Blackhawk West, that was stretching it. That statement was stretching it.
No, I don't. And I think it's partially because people are going to get off work and they're just going to want to jump into some action. But the other part of it is it's kind of like the Monday Night Football or the Sunday Night Football. People are going to jump on it because they're trying to clean up their act from earlier. And you know, we've watched a lot of Aztecs. You're an Aztec. So, you know, I kind of have a homer opinion on that one. But, and you know, you mentioned the Houston game. We've seen them put up a lot of points, and we've cashed a lot of tickets on Houston. So,
however, we have seen Houston stink. Every 4th or 5th game, they stink. And the reason they stink is because they get off a little, and then they start they don't pass. They just start throwing up threes. They're going to shoot their way out of it. And I called it the Allen Iverson school of shooting, But remember a few weeks back when Curry had one of those nights? I think he was 8 of 28 or something. But at the end, he had a 3 to tie it and a 3 to win it. And so shooters will shoot. That's what they do. So let's see. Do we have Mohammed with us? And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Mohammed is because we had Mohammed on the show before. And you know what I liked about Mohammed? You could tell that Mohammed's from 151 Sports Investing because Mohammed has good whys. And I really like whys. That was from the beginning. Sports Betting Weekly. It's as many opinions on as many games as one show can handle. But don't tell me who you like. Tell me why you like them, because if your why is poor enough, I'm going to bet against you. All right, so we're gonna check the live action board, and yeah, so they had 5 points with halfway through, and now they have 26. They're up 49. That's Drake we're talking about. They're up 49 to 47. Do you remember what the team totals were? Did I say? I think it was 57 and 47 at that point. So the Drake team total was already a winner. That was a play there. It's just hard for me I see a team that scores 20, and in the next 10 minutes they score 5. I'm not watching that game. I'm just not putting my hard-earned money on it if I'm not watching it. And really, how important, Wes, is watching if you're gonna do live action these next 2 days with 32 games? How important is watching it?
You got to watch the game. You absolutely have to, because there's things that take place in the game that you're able to sense, and you're able to see what's about to happen. And it's just only a matter of time before it does. And when it does happen, you're too late. The line has changed at that point, and you got to watch the game. You just do. And I think it's important to mention that Carolina is now ahead 2-1. So to get to that over 2.5, they need one more goal. And now it's tied. But we jumped on Carolina money line, so we're now 2-2 in the second.
Well, they were down 1-0, got a money line. They tied it up. They went up 2-1, and then they went down 2-1.
Right, and now we're looking at a tie game, but one more goal cashes us on the over 2.5.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like they're probably going to keep scoring. All right, so the schedule is very, very unique for the NCAA. So the schedule is normally Thursday, Friday, right? Thursday's winners play Saturday. Friday's winners play Sunday. That's not that rocket science. And then the next week, it happens all over again. But here's how it's working this year. The first round starts on Friday and Saturday. The second round, Sunday and Monday. Then they play Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday next week. And then the Final Four is on a Saturday. So the last weekend is going to be the same like it normally is, but every weekend up to that is going to be different. We're going to have March Madness. Remember how you always read the articles on how businesses suffer that Thursday and Friday? So, hey, business owners, you're going to suffer on Tuesday, but the way they're suffering over the last year, I don't think it's probably going to even matter. It's going to be brutal. Mohammed.
Yes, sir.
Happy March Madness to you.
Happy March Madness. I'm not in it this year as I would like. I've been mostly hoops. And I still haven't gotten over football. Football's been a great, great year.
Yeah, and that's why we miss football, because and that's why the month of July is so long, because it's only baseball. But before we go to break, we're going to have you fill us in on your top 2 plays Friday against the spread. Not bracket buster. We're talking about cash and tickets.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Brooklyn Nets. I've got actually a parlay started. If Wes can tell you anything about me, I've got a parlay going. But I've got Brooklyn covering the first half and the first quarter. I think it was 6.5 as well as 12. And then I also have a 6-game parlay. So this is my 6th game going. They've won the last 6, but I'm on 5 straight. If I cash the 6th one, and it'll pay out a decent amount. I've only put $10 on it.
So did you do open parlays?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, let me tell you, I had an open parlay once that had Alabama. It was really cool. Just looking at it was cool, because you can't do that with a paper ticket. You can't do that with a paper ticket, You got to do that online. So, but what I was talking about was your two best plays from Friday's board for March Madness.
For March Madness, I don't have anything just yet. I haven't even looked at it.
Oh, okay. That's what you said. You were 100% focused on the NBA. All right.
Yep.
So when we come back from break, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some brackets. We're going to look at Wes's live action, and we're going to continue to try to make this worldwide sports radio network app the Bitcoin. Worth its weight in Bitcoin. You're listening to Sports Betting Weekly.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Sports Betting Weekly.
Sit back and enjoy the show.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Welcome back to Sports Betting Weekly. I am second half Chaz. You are following us on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, and we're going to check out some live action. So when we first started, Carolina was down 1-0. Now that second quarter turned out to be very profitable if you were betting overs, Wes. Or second period.
Yep, it sure did. They cashed the first period. It was over 2, and it was a plus 110, and there were 3 goals scored in that period. So you certainly got paid on that Carolina game. It's 2-2. The second period is over. Carolina takes the lead. If they score another goal, even if it goes into overtime, if they score a goal and win it, we got the money line, plus we got the 2.5. We're under a minute to go in Buffalo, and Buffalo's got 1 on the board. 1 more gets us the over 1.5.
So we're assuming, though, down 3-1, we don't know, but we're assuming they're playing with extra guys.
At some point, yeah, I think so.
So let's look at that Chicago-Tampa, because I never have to do anything, okay? Let's make sure we're clear. I never have to do anything. But I really want to have some live action. So what I found was that game that you had mentioned that you said was going to go to 6. You said a game was going to go to 6, and I think it was Tampa Bay, Chicago.
Yep, I said I'd like it to get to 6. And we ended the second period. It's 2-2, and now that line has dropped.
Right, because we were looking at maybe hopping on it. You figure they score 4 goals in the first period, they're going to open up a little bit, but they got nada, right?
They got nothing, and so now it's 6.5, and at minus 115, that's a fair payoff. So 2 more goals, with a zero goal in the second period. You keep in mind with hockey, like you were talking about earlier, somebody takes the lead, the goalie's coming out. So the 6.5 is very realistic. I like that 6.5. Somebody takes the lead, you got an empty net possibility, or if they both score a goal and it becomes a tie game, I think you're safe there too.
Right. So one of the things that I like to do, and we've talked about this before, is I do the risk-win situation with both of those plays. So what I'm saying is this: if I can get the first one, I'm going to break even. If I get the second one, I'm going to win money. Now, how many times, and I mention it all the time, I'm blessed. I get to talk to a guy whose has got consultant in it, and another guy whose at's got investing in it. So in that respect, I know that these guys know what they're talking about. But what I'm looking at is when I go and do the risk win, if I break even, I don't look at that as a bad thing. And so many times, Wes, well, I broke even. Hello?
That's better than a sharp stick in the eye. And with some of these games, it's certainly better than walking away with a lighter wallet.
I cannot tell you how many times a ticket that I had left and I didn't cash in my wallet down in Caliente because it was a push. So it was 20 to win 18. I normally, I tell people I'm a $20 better, but they tend to forget sometimes I have a lot of tickets. The bottom line is, it's not $38, it's $20, so it kind of sits there. And oh my God, it's the last ticket. Then I hit and I hit again and I hit again, and that ticket that was a break-even ticket was the one that had me the bankroll to do what I did. And you got to start somewhere, Wes.
Yeah, And we are final. Wichita State loses 53-52. So they came back and came pretty close to that over. They didn't hit it. I thought we were at 54, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. Drake would have been the play because, of course, they were getting a handful of points. Remember, we had him at one point who said if you think they're going to come back and win by 6, it was worth 10-1 to you.
Yeah.
But so that's what I've got. I have my live play. It's on the Tampa Bay Chicago. We didn't do it in the second period. We paid attention to patience. We moved on with our lives, and they didn't score a goal. So now we need 2 goals. Basically, we've got the third period over 1.5. And I cashed that ticket. Then, if it gets to 6.5 that you talked about, then I win. But as long as it gets to 5.5, I'm going to break even. So that's what I'm looking at. I took a situation where I couldn't get 1.5 for the third. They wanted 2.5, but I ended up getting 1.5 because I did it for the game. And I paid. I did the odds. Now, could I win both of those? Sure. Sometimes you lose both, but that's why they call it gambling. So let's talk now about your bracket, Wes. Did you fill one out?
Oh, yeah, of course I filled one out.
How many did you fill out?
So I filled out, I think I'm at 4 right now. But the challenging thing is I look at it and I see the same thing on every single one of them. So, I filled out one that was just straight chalk. Just straight chalk. All number 1s in the Final Four because that's just what the odds are, just to see where that goes. And in that straight chalk, that had Gonzaga winning the whole thing. But the one that I'm the most passionate about, I have Houston winning the whole thing. And very very little upsets. I mean, there's some upsets I like from a investing standpoint. Taking points, it's going to be a closer game. But a 16 beating a number 1, I don't have any of that activity. I mean, I have most of the number 1s doing what they're supposed to do. The number 1 that I'm the least confident in would be Michigan, and that's just because I think that the Big Ten this year roughed each other up quite a bit, and they're out of all the conferences, that's the hardest one to read. So it wouldn't surprise me if Michigan fell at some point, even early to a team like LSU that can get some real hot hands.
Actually, I have them losing to Florida State.
And that's exactly what I have. I have them losing to Florida State, and I think I even put Florida State in the Final Four, going against Bama in the Elite 8.
So now I will say to you that 4 brackets is a very reasonable number because I know guys that I talked to today that had done double-digit brackets. All I did is I did the one bracket for the Belly Up show. I did one bracket, and I put it in 2 places. I put it on ESPN, and I put it on CBS Sports because, as you remember, we used to run our pool through our CBS Sports. But I've got Zags and Baylor, Alabama and Illinois, so 3 of the 4 ones getting there. And I've got Baylor beating Alabama 87-69. Did you go that far? Do you got the final score yet?
Yeah, I do have the final score. My Final Four is Baylor against Houston. I got the Zags against Florida State, and then I have Houston against Gonzaga in the final game, and I have Houston 84, Gonzaga 78. I just think Houston is going to have a harder road to get there than Gonzaga is, and by the time they get there, they'll be pretty battle tested, especially if they get there having beat Illinois and Baylor along the way. And Houston plays some real good defense. I mean, their defense, they put up a lot of points, but it's easy to forget how good that defense actually is. And I think it's better than Gonzaga's defense for sure.
Yeah, I took a couple times that we saw Houston stinking up that I watched them. I watched a lot of Houston. That's the main reasons I took number 6 seed San Diego State to beat Houston, and I'm betting it all because I know that if San Diego State's defense plays the way they can play with anybody. They can keep in touch. They've got a few shooters. Mitchell's a good ball player, but I also saw what Houston did when they were losing. They just kept shooting. They didn't care. They shoot. They like to shoot. They're shooters. What do they say? Shooters shoot, right? And
shooters
so, yeah. So
they're getting themselves the ball back enough to where if they miss, Who cares? We're going to get the ball back. We're playing great D.
Yeah, and so I looked at the Aztecs, and what I said on the show was, hey, they were in the top 6 or 4. If they were 4th or 6th last year, it was an even number. When the tournament was starting and they got bumped, so I mean, that, obviously, if you're in the top 10, you got a shot of winning it all. And since then, they only went 23-4. It is the Mountain West. Don't get me wrong, but Houston ain't playing in the SEC either. So in that respect, that's kind of the way I went with it. I'll be wearing my hat proud either way. And I was there when Kawhi should have beat UConn. They were up by 6 on UConn. Kawhi took a 3, and it rimmed out. And then there was the guy flopped for UConn. They got a technical. The bottom line is it fell apart after that. But that was the year UConn won it all, and the Aztecs had him, and they just couldn't put him away. And so I'm hoping for another run, because when your team, and you're in Kansas City, for heaven's sakes, when your team wins, everything's better. The guy at the deli's nicer. You talk to the mailman longer. You even bring out a drink to the trash guy when your town's winning. Everybody's nicer in your town. Isn't it true, Wes?
They are, and I've been lucky enough to experience that, having lived in Kansas City. So just a little bit over, I think it was 13 months ago, we were able to feel that, and we're a small town. So, yeah, it certainly is a great thing, because it brings you all together. It really does. And we have a thing, McDonald's, when the Chiefs get a sack, you get buy one, get one, Big Macs the very next day. Yep. So everybody's Big Mac celebrating it.
Yeah, we have, who does it? If the Padres hit a home run, and of course last year they hit a lot of home runs, somebody here gives you something, a fast food place, I forget what it is. And really, you don't think people love that? Of course they do. There's no doubt about it. All right, so I'm going to do a real quick shot. We're going to glance at the NCAA game that's going on that just started, and that is so Wichita's going home. Drake's going to the big dance. They're going to play. Remember, I know they're playing USC right now. Isn't that how it works?
They are playing USC, and I actually like the points and whoever was going to play against USC out of this game. So I didn't think it was going to be Drake. I thought it would be Wichita State. But, yeah, they're going against USC. And I haven't found a spread yet, but it'll be interesting to see where they put that. I'm hoping double digits.
And so now, later on, right now we've got Appalachian State and Norfolk State. They're playing to go to the tournament. And then we got UCLA and Michigan. And so that'll be it. Those are the 8 teams that are left. So we're going to know when we go to bed tonight, right? Who's going home and who's going to the big dance.
Yes, we will. And it is what a fun just explosion of college basketball we've had this last couple weeks. And it's not done. We're going to have it on Mondays and Tuesdays. And I don't know how.
That Tuesday one's got me.
How am I going to go to work at my
I'm
job?
telling you, it's got me a little giddy. I can't argue. All right, let's look at Saturday. So, Saturday, top 2 things that are jumping out at you.
The top 2 things that are jumping out at me on Saturday is I'm looking at Georgetown, and I'm going to be. I like the points there. And I think Georgetown's got a real shot at winning this game. I'm not prepared to call the upset, but I like the way Ewing's got that team playing, and they're sinking baskets. They're playing good defense. I think that Georgetown has a real shot in that game, and the points there are interesting at 6.5. I don't really think that the Pac-12 is the greatest conference as far as basketball goes. So Colorado's position might be a little overstated. The other one that I'm looking at, I'm an Ohio State guy. They have an easy path in front of them, but I don't think that if they were playing more difficult teams, Ohio State would go very far. What I'm looking at in that Ohio State game is, Ohio State is playing on Friday. It's the Ohio game that I'm looking at on Saturday that I mentioned earlier, and taking that first half 28.5 points.
Yeah, you got to think Virginia had to be impacted a little bit by I only laugh because it's hard enough to do anything remote. How do you practice a basketball team remotely, I just don't see how that can't impact them. And it's not like they were covering machines this year. They lost a couple good games. Didn't they get whacked by Gonzaga? Or they got whacked by somebody. I forget who it was, but they got whacked. I mean, they got beat up by somebody. So they're not, they are still, though, technically reigning national championship. And championshipfootballs.com, the coolest present they'll open that day guarantee is really a special gift for that biggest Virginia fan that you know, even if it's you, and we still do have a handful of the national championship basketball, souvenir basketballs from championshipfootballs.com. I'm going to do the same thing like I'm walking into the book. So you know how you said, okay, I'm going to finish my beer. You're at the blackjack, playing video blackjack, winning free bears, and you're up like, $22 or something. So I said, okay, I'll be right back. I'm just going to go check out the board. And I walk in, and there's the big board, and I see Memphis at Davidson, and I like Memphis. Memphis is a good basketball team. I like them. They have a coach that was a player, don't they?
Penny.
Yeah, Penny. And do you remember Little Penny? He was the best.
Were great.
Little Penny was the best. He really was. I agree with you wholeheartedly on Georgetown. The Florida State Greensboro game. We talked about this on the show with Belly Up Fantasy that we have a couple of these games here today that are 10.5 points. It was like, I don't know, what do you want the line to be, Wes? I don't know, Chaz, what do you want? Let's just make it 10.5. So that's what they did, because right away you come back to Kansas and Eastern Washington, and these are both now 13 and 14 seeds, and normally you're going to get beat up by more than 10.5. So those are lines that jump right out at me, and that means I'm not touching them before the game begins. No desire to bet the LSU, Michigan, and Texas Southern game is off. But again, number one's the only way we're betting number ones. I would think that I could speak for you, Wes, is they get down by 8 and the line drops by 8. And that's when we hop on them. And then we sit around and watch them win, not cover, and we cash our tickets. I like Alabama a lot. I'm not sure in this first round if that 17 points is too much. When I'm done, I want to ask you a question about points. I've got Iowa, again, 14.5. I'm not doing anything with any NIT games. Again, the Ohio-Virginia game, I understand what you're saying, but for right now, before that game started, I'm not touching it. Same thing with the UConn-Maryland game. I like Texas, but you know what? Texas is a team that they've been inconsistent, and I'm looking for teams that have been consistent. Oklahoma, I guess, lost a guy. Is that what you heard on the news?
Yeah, they lost a guy. I don't know specifically who it was, but yeah, it was on the news, and they did lose a guy. That's probably heard.
I heard number 2 scorer. That's what I heard. And then Oregon and VCU. Oregon won. I hit 3 games in a row, and one of the games I hit it twice with Oregon in the over parlay. Then they came out against Oregon State, and they just laid an egg. I agree with you, though, on the Pac-12. Though I like Oregon there, I don't see the Pac-12. What I said is the best thing they got going for them is Bill Walton calling the games, because he was on fire this past week. Oh, my God. The things that go through his brain make me look like a sane person. No doubt about that. So, all right. Anything else you want to add, Wes, before we go?
No, there's a lot of action this weekend. I just, be careful. Don't connect your bracket play with actually cashing tickets and get carried away with thinking that some wild underdog is going to win and make you $1 million. There's a clear difference between bracket play and actually cashing tickets. And be careful on these bigger spreads. There's a first half approach to getting yourself some early money on those.
And where can we find you?
You can find me at 151 Sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'm at Chicago Options Trader on a Discord page where I'm giving out live picks. You get some stock plays, too. And you get a trial premium membership. And you make money Monday through Friday as well.
All right, so what you need when we wake up tomorrow is Carolina. Doesn't matter, right? As long as they win.
Carolina 1 goal cashes. Carolina winning the game with 1 more goal, that cashes too. That's where I'm at.
All right, and I've got Chicago, Tampa Bay over 5.5 and 6.5 for the game. So I'm basically looking for a big third period. I am second half Chaz. If you were watching on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, check in again next Thursday. Otherwise, you can find us on sportsbettingweeklylive.com. And as always, Belly Up Sports on the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. Always be cashing.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.